Welcome to High-Tech Heroes, the program that takes you behind the scenes of today's high-tech industries, where you can meet the people and examine the ideas creating tomorrow's technology. And now, coming to you from the studios of Foothill College, high atop the mountains overlooking Silicon Valley, here's your host, Sherwin Gooch.
Well, we need another show.
Hello, I'm Sherwin Gooch. Welcome to High-Tech Heroes. As you can tell, we're taking up where we left off last week. For those of you who missed last week's show, this is Bruce McDiffett, architect, Industrial Light and Magic alumnus, graphics expert, SIGGRAPH chairman, futurist, and self-described degenerate mathematician. But before we get rolling, I'd like to show you this week's copy of the San Jose's second largest paper, the Metro. Let's see, where we...
Sherwin?
Yes?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Bruce for, Bruce Campbell, that is, for doing that article.
Yeah, well, yeah, Hud and I'd like to thank Bruce, Bruce with a double O, that is, Campbell, for writing this article. Except for being called a video synthesizer, everything was excellent. Anyway. So, well, it's not very often you get your picture on the cover, you know.
Congratulations.
Okay, well, thank you. And so I guess we were sort of in the middle of talking about social revolution, or
yeah, exactly. The whole point is to, rather than just be a whole bunch of high-tech heroes, or even worse, high-tech zeros. One of the things I would not want to be is a high-tech Nero. That is the kind of person who hangs out and has a great time with technology while the rest of society kind of crumbles around him. And so what I'd like to try to get everybody to think about is ways to actually make our world better, because we really do have an opportunity to do that. And I think those things are extremely important. So we're going to continue with the final phase of that this week.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, I guess just make it sufficient to say that we had a little problem with the timing last time.
Oh, indeed.
In fact, a number of problems with timing last time.
Timing is everything.
So I'm still curious. You know, you had a job at Industrial Light and Magic that almost everybody would envy. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious as to, you know, was there a straw that broke the camel's back that made you know it was time to move on?
When I realized that everything that I was going to do was going to enable people who already had lots of money and everything that they needed to somehow make their own lives a little bit easier. It wasn't really particularly making my life easier. It wasn't making it easier for me to be a filmmaker on limited budget, or even you guys. And I decided that, well, your budget is a little bit bigger than mine, so I decided that it was time to bail out. I'd done a lot of great things there. The people are extremely cool, but I wasn't changing the world, exploding, you know.
At least not changing in the direction you wanted to go.
Chrome guy, one after another, year after year. So it's time to move on.
Now, you made some remark that you think the world is not really the wonderful place that a lot of people think it is.
Well, no, I don't think so either. And if you sit around and ask yourself, we have all sorts of wonderful technological innovations that we look at and say, wow, this is a great thing. I'm so enamored of it. But does anyone ever step back and say, is this the perfect world? We have technological innovations that make it easier to talk to one person, or to make more business calls, or to make more faxes, or make more copies.
Pangloss, I don't know.
Yeah. But we don't really have, all these things make the world more of the way that it is now, but somehow it doesn't change. So if you're happy with going to work 60 hours a week to pay off your car, then that's kind of cool.
Well, if you can get a job.
If you can get a job.
You know, I think one of the major problems, as I said before, is the centralization of wealth, which, you know, there's an economist that I like called Ravi Batra, and he has this thing about, he tries to find out how it is, and 1% of the people own 33% of the wealth in 1928, and now it's 36% of the wealth in the upper 1%. And I can't help but think that what's happened is we have runaway feedback, because you know, you have compound interest, which Einstein said compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe because it has no limit. But
yeah, I guess he banked at my bank.
well, anyway, you know, I mean, whoever has the most money, if you just invest it and are guaranteed no risk, then you automatically win the game, right?
Golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what's happening. But the thing that I find sinister about it is that right now it's even the case that the most secure thing you can do is put your money in Treasury bills, which is about 8%, and then somebody pays all those people, you know, 8%, and you wonder why isn't the balance, you know, why isn't the budget balanced? Why do we have a deficit? And one of my friends suggests that's because the people who have all this money have to invest it someplace, and what better place, because who pays them the interest? You know, you and I do,
That's exactly
and the
right.
collection agency is the IRS. It's kind of amazing.
Pretty serious, folks. So, but what I'd like to point out is that we actually have some tools, or will be able to develop some tools in the next 5 to 25 years that will allow us to really radically restructure the way that world works. That gives people like you and me, who don't have billions of dollars, unless you've got some stock I don't know about.
Now, my stock's all in Cray, which is not a good place for it to be right now.
That really will give us the opportunity to change our world for the better. They're all based around variants of communication, to review some of the stuff that we talked about last week. Communication both in terms of education and learning of what other people have to say and think, and communication out in terms of expression and interaction and being able to express your own ideas. So that's where the real
How
power
about
lies.
finding out who has what money where?
Well, exactly. That's part of the communication in. That's education, that's learning, that's discovery.
You know, I would say, I have one suggestion that somebody brought up to me, and I think, you know, we talk about poles and zeros and runaway feedback with this interest. I think that what should be done, you know, because income is not wealth, and that's not, the problem isn't distribution of income, the problem is distribution of wealth. So I think that maybe they could have a wealth tax or an asset tax, so that depending on your total amount of assets, you just pay 1% of that to the government. Turns out 1% will pay off the debt and balance the budget.
I think that people with wealth would probably disagree with you pretty vehemently, and so.
They think it should be more than 1%?
Oh no, just the whole notion.
Oh, well, it could be, but
I guess what I want to talk about are ways that not only you and I can have a discussion about this, but everybody out there can involve themselves, so that we can all come to some kind of consensus about how we do want to change things, as opposed to, I mean, it might work out, it might be faster if say, you were to decide and then just tell all of us, you know, via local access, what to do and make the world better.
well, it's just a suggestion. I don't.
Gooch for emperor. Or you could run on Ross Perot's VP slot. That would probably work pretty well, too. But if we go up here to the old monitor, I want to, if we can pick this up, the way the world works now in terms of communication is that information flows from the top, that is up here at the top, down this tree down to us. And there's not really much of a way for us to communicate this way, or information to flow back up here. So what we know down here, you and I, when we read the Metro or whatever, is what somebody way up at the top really thinks is the truth, and doesn't really have a whole lot to do with what you think or somebody else thinks or HUD thinks is the truth. This is very dangerous, because this little bottleneck, like anybody who's done computer programming or hardware design, you know that bottlenecks give you a great deal of power and leverage to control what goes through them.
Yeah, we talk about Chinese water lords, you know, grab a resource and make sure that nobody can get to it without going through you. Right?
Exactly, and that's what the information resource is in our country and, in fact, most of the world. If you want some alternative views on the way information structure really works, and to show you that, you can read either this, which I think I held up just at the end of last week's show, Manufacturing Consent. This is a book by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky. It's called The Political Economy of the Mass Media. Wonderful treatise on the way media works and information flows in our world. We got that?
Well, we're getting it.
Oh, we're getting it.
Noam Chomsky is a linguist, right?
One of the things he has done is linguistics. That's true. That's where he first made a name for himself, but he spends a lot of time doing social analysis.
Was it a cunning linguist, you think?
I would think so. I mean, if I were a linguist, I would certainly spend as much time as I possibly could being cunning.
So let's do it.
The other one is, this is a monthly magazine. It's called Z. It's available at any reasonable...
It's out of New York, right?
Actually, it's out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
And this provides a different view of the way the world works. Again, just to convince yourself that maybe what you read or see on the TV every day isn't exactly the complete story.
So
and this just happens to be...
This is
this is President
Reagan
Bush.
This is Bush.
Yeah, reaching out to address human suffering. And if you can read this...
It says, pardon me, have you got any Grey Poupon?
Yeah. Okay. So it's really pretty cool.
Those people are...
so you can read this just to convince yourself that the way the world is different. What we really want to move to is a system like this, if we can move back to the Macintosh monitor, where we have a political communication network, so that you can talk to me and talk to everyone else, and I can do the same thing, rather than getting our information from one central source.
So this is a well-connected net?
This is indeed a well-connected net. This is clearly the optimal way that you can connect all these nodes. Some hypercube or some variant on this would also work, as long as we have some approximation thereof, rather than the single source of information that we have now.
Pure chaos like Usenet?
Indeed, one of the problems is that you may trade the tyranny of the minority for the tyranny of the majority, which is not really a win, but all that points out is that one needs to continue to be vigilant in one's attempt to foster change. rather than just say, oh, I changed this, now it's all fixed. That's not true at all.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, we've got a little bit more time to go to a break.
Okay.
A break now? Is this a logical place?
Actually, yeah, we've talked about problems now, and what we'll do when we come back, I guess,
Talk about
is
solutions.
talk about some of the technologies and what those technologies buy us in terms of solutions, the real benefits from them. So does that work for everybody?
That's great, yeah. So we'll just pause and catch our breath. And now, as Janis Joplin would say, stay tuned for a message of great social and political import. So you're going to be able to go out.
There was a time when hundreds of elephants were being slaughtered every day. Then in 1989, a worldwide ban on ivory was created to protect the elephant families left behind. But in 1992, some countries want to end the ban and will have to wonder what was the point of the last 2 years. Called the African Wildlife Foundation. Don't let the slaughter start again.
Thousands of innocent children were caught in the crossfire of violent crime. How much longer will you let this go on? Call this number now. We'll send you information on how you can protect your children from crime in your neighborhood. Together, we will take a bite out of crime.
Okay, well, welcome back to High Tech Heroes. I'm Sherwin Gooch. Today, Bruce McDiffett is telling us what we, as technologists, can do to most improve our future. And so you talked about problems. Now, what are the solutions you're going to
Okay, we're going to talk about some solutions. And just two things to keep in mind. One is a review of why this would be useful. If you ever had any experience with a media event and you read about it or you watch it on TV afterwards, you typically say, hey, that's not what happened at all. I mean, that's a lot of my experience.
I was thinking about that earlier.
Yeah,
a friend of mine pointed out in magazine that if you read something, well, I shouldn't mention, but
right.
in a national news magazine, it usually looks pretty good. But if you actually were involved with the event, you read it, you go,
hey,
well,
this is bogus. Exactly.
Right.
And so think, all right, well, we need to change this, or at least get more data points so you can come up with some statistical analysis of what happened in the world. And second thing to keep in mind is this world the world that you think is the best possible one? Is this the world that you want to, is this the pinnacle, or do you want to make it better? And keep those two things in mind, and that'll help keep you motivated. So let's talk about some of the technologies that are really going to allow us to change the world.
Okay.
If we can come up with a polygonal communications model, then what we have the ability to do is come to some kind of group consensus about the things that we want, rather than feel that somebody else sets our agenda.
Of course, the amount of copper in this thing goes up proportional to the factorial, right?
Oh,
bandwidth that's
assuming that you implement it with copper. If you implement it with broadcast or some other mechanism,
then the
spread
bandwidth
spectrum.
goes up.
Yeah, but
Same thing.
you can implement it with either local cells, some kind of honeycomb network. It doesn't have to be everyone has
Sure,
a direct
of course.
connect
I mean, it
packet
couldn't
switch
be,
from point to
but-
point. What you want to do is get more input than you have now, which is just one thing. I want to be able to talk to you. I don't want to have to read about what you think in the newspaper. Not that, although it's very entertaining. So we're talking about information technologies. They include things like video cameras. Got probably the most revolutionary device I've ever seen here in this little box, and this is it. I mean, this is something that has actually changed the world.
It's got some
From
packing
there's
peanuts
some,
in here.
Sony packs those things. I should probably catch this and rebroadcast it. This has changed the face of the Soviet Union.
These
It's
are
changed
actually biodegradable, edible.
I guess they are now by default. By definition. Also changed the state of the world in Los Angeles. This is amazing. This is cheap. Everybody can have one of these. It's stuff like this that's going to make things different. I also want to talk about stuff like I was going to bring along a little still camera, which is similar technology, something that costs a couple of $100 and records the state of the world in a still image that you can stick. Yeah, the Zapshot is one instance. There are 20 different manufacturers of similar cameras.
Yeah, right.
Take those pictures, paste them in the documents, ship them around. Rather than just writing a text description, everybody gets the opportunity to, boom, make their own photographic newspaper and ship it wherever they want to. That's incredibly liberating. Also, in terms of people dealing with digital pictures and learning to be able to manipulate them, things like photo CD, which is technology that Kodak is pushing, where you take your film to the local photo shack or photo bucket, and out pops a little CD-ROM with your pictures on the back end. That's something that's going to be happening later this year. Now, if we look further down the road, you want to look for things like improvements in printing technology, because all the things we talked about, a couple of $100s, a couple of $1,000, folks here working in the Valley think, oh, that's chump change. Well, somebody who is getting beat over the head to harvest a few more bananas down in Central America doesn't really have a couple of $100 to go off and blow on a zap shot, and he doesn't really drive to Photomat very often to develop the family snaps.
CD-ROM player to put it in.
And he doesn't have a CD-ROM player attached to his portable to be able to read your wonderfully published electronic magazine. So you need to be cognizant of the fact that not everybody's wealthy. You need to be able to publish things on paper for the foreseeable future. So don't forget that. But improvements in printing technology, color printers that are cheap, are going to be available in 10 years. And those are also...
10 years? Oh, I mean, sooner than that.
It depends on your definition of cheap.
We're ready right now.
Well, I'm ready right now, too. Other things in terms of the connectivity, ISDN, fiber to the home, so that where everybody lives...
Direct broadcast satellite.
Direct broadcast satellite, another wonderful example. That's the communications infrastructure. It's probably going to be done by the telcos rather than some for-profit agency or the government, and that they have the most experience and they have the most incentive for sucking information back out.
I thought the telephone companies were for profit.
Well, they are. I was going to say some new entity.
Kidding.
Yeah, indeed. Very much for profit, but rather than a cable company, which typically just broadcasts stuff in, telephone companies want you to generate information back to the network, because that's how they're going to make their money. So telcos will probably win. Anyway, we need to think about it, but those are the folks who are going to put the networking underneath so we can actually talk.
It's too bad, the cable administrators had a chance to play in this game, and they
blew it.
Well,
yeah. That's evolution happening for you. Other things that we need now, wonderful areas of research are things like gesture recognition, improved handwriting or voice recognition, eye tracking. Not only things like that you'd use in an office environment, but spatial recognition of movement, so that you can communicate not just in terms of, oh, here's my latest memo and here's a spreadsheet.
Well, it's probably healthier too. I mean, you could do physical things. I had a friend who wanted to have a word processor where you have the words on the wall and grab them and move them around.
That's right.
You could have a giant desktop too, I guess.
It would be fun. And it doesn't have to be limited to the publication of revolutionary documents. It can be something. These kind of technologies allow us to communicate, to do things like art or dance or some kind of performance art, to just interact on a larger scale without being bound to being in the same room. Really important stuff. So there's a great deal of work that can be done that I would like to hope that other people are working on, rather than just an improved VCR that no one can still program, or a little personal digital assistant that will allow you to dial into the home shopping network and order some other piece of garbage for an outrageous price so you can go to work the next day or end the day after that to try to pay it off.
Yeah, well, that's...
Ooh, you're speechless. This is an event.
Yes, it is. I'm speechless. I'm thinking about the shopping network.
Oh yeah, that's right. Drooling over it, as do I sometimes.
Well, we tried to build something like that again with a company here, Packet Technologies. We had two-way cable working, but it didn't require any special technology.
Ooh,
just a telephone. And
the downfall, I'm sure.
They say that the guy who invented that had to. His daughter went to college and he had to pay the bills, so he just had this idea and went out and did it and made a fortune.
That's great. I think that people have an understanding of the kind of technologies that not only are coming online, but that they can work to develop to try to enable some of these changes.
But you're saying almost all exclusively communications technology. That's where you see the benefit coming
That's
from.
where I really see it, because it allows us to join together. I mean, one of the strategies in any kind of argument or battle is divide and conquer. Divide and conquer works well. If you can't divide us...
It seems to me that that's already happened, right? I mean, the printing press, we're talking about a quantum leap. The printing press really did that to a large extent. It made it possible for the common man to communicate who couldn't buy books that were handwritten, or the monks would write them out. Well, I guess I have this theory about bandwidth versus memory storage. That, for example, you and I have quite a bit, quite a few bits of information, 10 to the 10th or 10 to the 10 to the 10th bits of information in our brains, potentially, something like that. And
well, you do have a particularly big brain, Sherwin.
I don't know if that's true or not. People say I have a fat head. But anyway, I think that if you have a high bandwidth of communication relative to the amount of information at the nodes, to use this picture again, then you end up with something like a hive, where the bees are individual nodes, but they're, the information is everywhere at once. And if you have a lot of information in slow bandwidth, like humans, talking at 10 bits per second, then you end up with separate individuals. And so what you're saying is by changing this ratio, by having a higher bandwidth between people, we become more of a community or a hive.
You're absolutely right. One of the amazing things is that if you look at this the right way, we really have the power to evolve ourselves as a species. That's amazing. Rather than having it happen randomly because somebody
maybe it
bit
already
your grandfather
happened.
in the head.
You look at the dolphins, and at least the carrier frequencies that they use are fast enough to communicate pictures. So it'd be like instead of talking and communicating sounds, we could throw pictures or movies at each other.
Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? But if we change this and change the way we communicate and the bandwidth that we have, and move to some other structure, you can look at an analogy. You say you brought up the picture of a hive. I think of going from a single cell to a unit to a multicellular organism, like
a corporation.
Whoa,
a government.
I'm trying to be optimistic here.
Oh, well, okay.
So,
but they exist, right?
So the progression from bacterium, which is one thing and it swims along, takes care of itself, to like a body that has some organized arrangement of cells that all cooperate to achieve some common goal, each one of which may not know what the entire goal is, but they all cooperate from the skin cells to I guess the organ cells, the heart cells, the brain cells, and in the case of most males, the penis cells up on top of the hierarchy. But we really have the opportunity to change ourselves as a species. That is amazing and a wonderful opportunity. It would be a shame to see that lost.
Well, I mean, we could always have a leapfrog technology and just replace everything with robots, right?
I guess so, and let them take over. I guess that if you want to get philosophical about why do anything, we are just some backwater planet in the middle of nowhere in our universe.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of, you just agree, sort of identify with sentient beings, or does it have to be, are you a Homo sapiens chauvinist?
Oh, not at all, not at all. I mean, I would, in fact, like there to be other kinds of beings with whom to interact, either from some other planet or some other part of the universe, or ones that we're able to manufacture and bring into the world ourselves. That would be an amazing, I don't know whether I could actually handle the feeling of saying, I've created this new life, and I know how I did it, as opposed to it just kind of happened randomly, or oops, oh, sorry.
Well, if they can build extensible neural nets, we're going to see that happen probably very soon.
Yeah. So we're going to evolve. The other thing I want to talk about is, okay, we talked about technology, and one of the things that leads this into, let's look at some of the other benefits that we get from doing this. If you say that we have a brain structure, think of how much more a person can accomplish than a bacterium. Now, I know we all have coworkers that we probably put on the same scale, or maybe managers, but in general, an organized system really can accomplish a whole lot more. We have the opportunity to make that leap. That's an amazing thing. A couple of other things I do want to point out.
Another thing that would change, Seymour Cray always claims that the optimum size for a group is 30 people, because that's most people that he can keep on a first-name basis with and really know what's happening in their lives and who's doing what. And I think if you have more communication, maybe you can actually keep up with more people. So your immediate cell or family size gets larger.
Yeah. Well, I think the other things that we can do here is if we have better communications technology. You talked about the printing press. We really are at that point again. We're at another juncture in time that is much like the time of Gutenberg, where society and the way we think about it is going to change completely. But we have control of that if we want to take it. If we don't, somebody else will. But what that allows us to do, communication is essentially transportation of ideas. So it wins out over transportation here. What it will allow us to do is revel in our common humanity, while at the same time celebrating our diversity as individuals. And there are some wonderful...
Well, I hope so, I mean, what I see is more like Player Piano by Vonnegut, where the machines have taken away the labor, but nobody is paying and nobody has jobs.
Indeed. Let me point out a couple of ways you can think about things. The way that you think about time and frequency. If you have a function in frequency that is one instant point, you can consider that now. In time, through a Fourier transform, that maps to a representation over all of time. That's like
a lightning burst?
A delta function to zero.
Oh,
think about mapping that to your own existence in terms of the effect you can have. Think about that as a continuation of your influence on the world.
So you're going to say here, my life is this long?
Or your life is this long, but through a change of mindset, it's the way that what you really do is interact over an infinite period of time. Let's screen people. We've got a couple of minutes left. Another analogy that comes up that I think is really sweet is the wave-particle duality from quantum physics to bring stuff in for the gear queers out in the audience. you can either be a particle where everything is happening here and now, and that's really where you have to act. I mean, it's the think globally, act locally kind of thing. But the duality of the particle is that it's also a wave, which exists everywhere.
But really, it's a wave with sine x over x, right?
Not for a regular wave, I don't think. Oh, well, I guess.
I mean, for a for a wavicle.
Okay, for a wavicle, I'll defer to you there. But I just found these very useful ideas, the way that through a transformation or a change of your point of view, you can motivate yourself to say, oh, here's what I'm doing now, but here's how it can affect the rest of the world. I mean, it happens, it just depends on how you want to think about it.
Non-local action.
Non-local action. One other thing I want to point out, okay, we talked about evolution and cells not being able to know what's going on. What is this thing? Who knows what this is? How does one brain cell know? Well, what this is, it's one pixel of this. So if you can think about yourself as that one pixel.
It looks like it was an ocean or a cloud.
Indeed it was, but it was one part. But that one part is necessary to make up the whole. If you want to think about those things, to work towards this better world, I really think that we're at a point where we can make that happen. And it's within our grasp. We just have to stay motivated and do it.
Well, that's great. I hope you're right. I think technology is kind of without moral feeling, so I hope it goes in the right direction. Anyway,
we have to have the feeling. We can't depend on technology. We have to remember. We have to keep in mind. It's human beings that make the change.
That's probably more important now than ever.
Change doesn't happen by itself.
So with that, so we're out of here. So thanks for watching High Tech Heroes. Be sure to watch High Tech Heroes again next week. Until then, may God's dice favor you. Au revoir.
Thank you for joining us this week for High Tech Heroes. Be sure to watch High Tech Heroes again next week when we will bring you more entertaining information about the people and ideas behind the scenes in high-tech industry. And now, this is your announcer, Margie Foote, wishing you the best of luck and a pleasant week. Au revoir.
This episode of High Tech Heroes has been made possible in part by grants from Linksys Corporation of Lafayette, Indiana, Kinetic Microscience of San Jose, California, Behind the Scenes Software Incorporated of West Lafayette, Indiana, and Cybernetic Arts of Sunnyvale, California.